بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أيها الشعب التونسي، نكلمكم اليوم ونكلمكم الكل في تونس وخارج تونس. نكلمكم بلغة كل التونسيين والتونسيات. نكلمكم الآن لأن الوضع يفرض تغيير عميق.
وشاءت الأقدار وشاء التاريخ في هذا اليوم الذي نحتفل فيه بذكرى إعلان الجمهورية، شاء أن نتخذ جملة من التدابير الاستثنائية التي يقتضيها الوضع في تونس.
Hailed as the only democracy emerging out of the Arab Spring, Tunisian democracy has been under question ever since current Tunisian President Kaes Saed on the 25th of July 2021 dismissed the government and decided to freeze parliament. Many questions have been raised, and today's guest is Tunisian former student activist and journalist at Mishkal, Ghaya Ben Mbarek. Welcome, Ghaya.
Hello, Abdallah. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is mine. So, Ghaya, you're a former student activist. So how about you? You know, as an Egyptian, when I read that, I kind of envied you for having this experience, because you know, as you know, and as listeners know, we haven't had much activism or even politics really in the last 6 years or so. So how about you speak further on your student activism?
Yeah, so here's one thing about me that maybe some people do not know. Most people now know me as Ghaya, the journalist, but so I'm part of the generation that initiated their university studies after the revolution. So when the revolution took place, I was in the second year of high school. That's when pretty much I started my activism, and I started being aware of the political scene in Tunisia, what's going on. I've been aware before, but I've never been active because of the atmosphere. And also I was young when the revolution took place. I was 14, 15, and also my parents were apolitical, and they were like every Tunisian family, super scared of just talking politics at home. But when the revolution took place, it opened lots of doors, and I became further and further interested in politics and interested in taking an active role in Tunisian daily political life. I did not want to be that passive bystander. So I got that chance to become more active when I got into university in 2013. It was 18. I got into university when I was 18. I started being active with the General Tunisian Students' Union, UJET, which I would describe it as the secular, more leftist students' union in university. It's been around since 1952. It has a long history, and because I had a specific ideological alienation, I chose to be part of UJED instead of taking part of the other union which existed, which is UGTU, and which is more called as Ennahda Students University, or this. It's more reserved for Islamists, more conservative students that would join that. So I joined UJET, and simultaneously I had a political experience with the leftist political party that I should not be naming now. I cannot name, but it was also a good experience because my experience within like a student union and my experience within like a political party, and more precisely the youth wing of a political party, it made me the person that I am today. So I remained active within the political wing of that political, the youth wing of that political party for only 2 years, because to be honest, I did not feel like the kind of activism that I want to do matched what that party was offering at that time, and especially lots of things changed like after 2011. So I maintained my activism within the students union, like whether it is like about students' rights, but at the same time the students movement in Tunisia is not only about the students' rights, it's also about the rights of the people. We have one of the main slogans of UJET where the students movement is an indivisible part of the popular movement. So whatever concerns the people, whatever issue that is politically outside in the street and that concerns the people, the students movement was usually like part of it. And if we go back like before 2011, most of the movements that went out in the street, it was mainly like moved from universities. It started from universities. And that's why we had something before 2011 called the campus police. There were police on campuses just like to supervise and monitor students, which eventually did not exist anymore when I got into university in 2013. That experience, like that students union experience, my political experience, at the same time we had this new wave of civil society experience, made me a specific type of activist that you can find lots of people like me, like who had these like similar experiences. Like for example, you would find people that were active like in UJET and had also an experience in some sort of like leftist or nationalist party, or like some people who were active in UJTU as well and were like members of Ennahda or certain political party, or there are also people who were independent in terms of like belonging to a party, but they were not independent politically. So the university is a major pillar for politics in Tunisia. Lots of things happen in universities, and we're very active. So one of the funny things that I had is that I had in 2018, I was an exchange student in Uppsala University in Sweden, and I was like curious to know about students' union in Sweden, like in Uppsala University. So I kind of like went on and tried to discover that, but it was very different. So the type of activism in Sweden is mostly about like formal dinners and like some pub crawls or what I don't know what they call it. So I was like, what are you doing? Is this like the sort of activism, just like some formal dinners and I don't know, costume or costume like parties? Just I hope nobody's gonna get offended by this, but so there's like a huge difference. We are very politicized. So I grew up in a generation that is very politicized and very engaged in the discussion. At least that's where I found myself in. And
too radical for Swedish.
Exactly, it's very radical, very different. And the thing is that I went into university for human sciences and social sciences because I studied English and international relations. And most of these universities have an active political life. So you would find different organizations having clubs, and you would find UJET and you would find UJTU, and you know, the usual clashes between different parties. So it really helped shape who I am today, even though it has not been always pleasant, and it had traumatized me in a sense, in some sort of way. But I don't think I would have gained the trust that I have now as a journalist from people in the street and from activists if I did not have that, if these people did not know me from like a few years ago. So people know that I was an activist, know the kind of principles that I believe in, what I support and what I do not. And people trust me, and it gives me like a wide network of connections and the different people that I would talk to. And even as an activist in university, I was not quite the radical person. I was more of a diplomatic person, and maybe because I was studying international relations, so I was trying like to be diplomatic. So even though like some of my comrades like in UJET would not talk to people from UJTU, like from the Islamist party, I was actually friends with a bunch of them, and I did not have an issue with that. So till today, for example, if I need to confirm something from another party, I would call my ex friends like from university days. We're no longer fighting, we're grown-ups now. So but I can confirm that I find myself that really helped me a lot in gaining people's trust, and in and you know, just like understanding more about politics. So politics is not just the theory. So it's really, I always say this one thing, it's different, like perspectives differ from people who are actually engaged and active within specific organizations, and the people who just like study theories and know politics from theories. And this is nothing like, I'm not belittling their work or anything, but perspectives are always different and experiences are always different. So for me, a person who had been active in a specific period of time in Tunisia's political status quo in 2013, it was the year of assassination. That was my first year in university. So that specific year, it still shapes my views today. My experience as an activist that year, it still shapes my views today. And probably that's why sometimes I might seem as like radical in my opinions, even though, believe me, I'm the least radical person you would meet. But I'm entitled to having certain like perspectives and certain specific opinion, even if I am a journalist, and that does not make me any less of a journalist. So professional journals, because I know how to separate those aspects. And there's one thing about people, it's not about people, it's mostly about like foreigners, for example, who come into Tunisia and who they do not know about this. In Tunisia, there's really like a thin line between journalism and activism. So most journalists that you would meet are active in a certain way and engaged in a certain way, because we carry that responsibility in this specific time in Tunisia. So we cannot just alienate ourselves and keep talking about events in Tunisia from like we are Tunisians. We've been part of the street and the movement in the street since 2011 till now. So we cannot really alienate ourselves when we are reporting. We report with a Tunisian perspective, of course, always trying to maintain professionalism and the deontology of the profession. But we really cannot say, oh no, we're just reporters, or oh no, we're just journalists. No, we are activists as well, and I take pride in that. So that's why in my bio you would read a former students activist, but I am still activist, like in my heart. So like from the topics that I report on, the subject that I choose, like to write articles about, the people that I choose to talk to, I don't think I would have the same flexibility if I was working in mainstream media. But since I am working with an alternative media platform, and since I got the opportunity also to be writing in English, I get to choose the subjects of my interests, which is I'm really very lucky to be doing so, and I'm very lucky to be able to still continue my activism as a journalist. So I keep saying one thing is that I feel like journalism is an extension of my identity as an activist. So I did not stop being an activist, but I just started journalism as the extension to that part of my life, and I'm still doing that.
And the next question is gonna sound like a very dumb question, but you know,
No, okay, it's okay.
not all Middle Eastern countries are democratic, you know. So when you say student activist, what do you mean by that? Like, what do? Do you host like discussion circles?
What do we do? It's
organize protests.
Basically, yeah, we organize talks, we organize debates. But it's mainly about students' rights, because of course Tunisian universities are not the best in the world, whether academically, whether on the level of like infrastructure, or rather on the level like of students having a variety of cultural activities to do and grow through like in university. So for example, for me, in 2016, 2017, I was elected as a students delegate for the master's students to represent the master's students. We have this thing called the Scientific Council in each university. And the Scientific Council is basically like comprised of the director, the secretary generals, the head of departments from each department, like let's say anthropology department, English department, French department, and there were also student representatives. We would have two representatives of students from or studying the bachelor degree, and one representative representing masters and doctorate students. And in these meetings, we would discuss students' interests. For example, students' exam schedule, students who would be going to stand before the discipline council. We would negotiate terms. It's basically, it's a union role. So it's a union. So it's similar to like a trade union defending workers in front of the I don't know, the head of the a certain company. So that's our role as students representatives and as like students union is defending the rights of students and demanding the development of the university, demanding easier exam schedule, like schedules that take into consideration the humanity of students. And because in Tunisia we really have such a rigid system, like I remember in my master's I had 9 subjects that I had to study at once, and these 9 subjects I had to do presentations and papers and midterms and finals. So that's a killer. So what we were trying to do, so at least beg them to, not beg them, but we would negotiate and we would even go on strikes, like to at least let us have a margin between one exam and another. So that's what we would do. And sometimes there were like cases, for example, of you know, some technicalities in the marking system and the some conventions that are signed by some departments. We would ask for more exchange programs. But at the same time, whenever there was a momentum, like there was like a big political event taking place in the country, we cannot just like stand by. For example, during the assassination of Shukri Belaid, of course, UJET is a secular leftist union. We had strikes, we had protests. It was very intense. Whenever there was like also police violence taking place on the street, we would protest in university and we would lead national rallies towards, I don't know, the Ministry of Interior or towards like whatever ministry of regard. And also there was within UJET there is national coordination. So whenever there is a national issue taking place, for example, the after 2011, there were lots of talks about the reforms of the higher education system. So these talks, they tried, let's say, to include students, but students' opinions were never taken into consideration. So UJET would launch national marches towards the Ministry of Higher Education in order to push towards more inclusion of students in this reform. Yeah. So basically, that's it. So there's the we say the demand side of our activism, like the daily demands regarding our student life, and there's also the political, socio-political, I would say, aspect of activism within UJET. It's basically takes all the time. There are also some specific dates that we have that we usually celebrate and remember. For example, the date of the establishment of UJET, and also some like marking symbols. Also, we would have lots of celebrations on Earth Day for Palestine, because also one of the key slogans of UJET is the Palestinian cause is at the top of all national liberation movements. So that they're like, I'm really amazed that I still remember all these details, even though it's been a long time. But yeah, these are like pretty much like the aspects we focus on. We used to focus on I used to focus on UJET because UJET still exists, you know.
Yeah. So you said that the Shukri Belaid and the Muhammad Ibrahimi assassinations sort of radicalized you or jump started your activism. So how did that
Yeah. So it coincided with my first year in university, but I think no, it happened during my last year in high school. Yeah, because it was like in winter, like Shukri bin Eid, and Brahmi was during the summer. It's not radicalization, but it's rather a moment of awareness, a sudden awareness that, oh no, I should not just like stand by and be like a passive viewer. And also for me, Shukri Belaid and Brahmi and people from like similar thoughts, who had like carried similar thoughts to Belaid and Brahmi, were people that I was like very influenced by, and were people that I considered as my some sort of role models, and the people that were saying the things that needed to be said at a very critical point in Tunisia, when there was obviously a prevalence of um, uh, lots of radicality, some certain way of fanaticism and religious, I would say, religious fanaticism and terrorism, and this new Wahhabist like wave taking over the country. And that is something, of course, that I did not imagine would be taking place after 2011. Or like maybe not imagine, but I did not understand that much, so that like I would expect it. But it's my main point was that I cannot allow my country to go in such a direction. So for that reason, I chose like to be active and continue on with the message of Belaid and Brahmi. And it's not just like Belaid as a person, but just like the idea, the thought, the perception that we had about Tunisia and what country we wanted Tunisia to be. So the country that I dream of is definitely not a country of assassinations, blood, fanaticism. It's not a country where I'm going to be like, it's definitely not the sort of country that I was seeing in 2012 and 2013. So it came, to be honest, spontaneously. My decision to go into to choose to be on the left, and I'm not. And to be honest, I'm not ashamed to say that, even as a journalist now, because people think, oh, you're hiding. I do say that I am a leftist at heart. I believe in those, in what I read and what I learned, and those ideals represent me, even though that my family, as I said, is apolitical, but not totally, because this is another thing that people don't know about me. My mom was part of the Ennahda party before becoming Ennahda party. My mom was part of the Islamist current at the beginning in the 80s, but she was kicked out of school because of that. And she was let down by her brothers and sisters in the movement because she was poor. So they did not defend her, and they let her get to jail. And she quit that movement because after realizing what kind of people they were, the kind of I don't know, classism that existed within the movement, but not only that, the kind of violence that they carried in their message. Because the only reason my mom joined them is because she thought they were God-fearful people and they would not harm others, and they just want the best for Tunisia and they want justice. But the fact that my mom had that experience, we were apolitical, but one thing for sure, we would never follow radical Islam or any sort of political Islam movement, because she saw the true face, and she was within within the bodies of this movement at its establishment in the 80s. It was like pretty much like the beginning of the establishment of the Islamist current in Tunisia. So I was totally aware of all the things that they are denying at the moment. So I honestly just like found myself more lenient toward like more secular leftist types of thinking. And also I am from like a very rural area, from a very marginalized area. I'm not from the capital Tunis, I'm from Tabak in the northwest. We're from a very like marginalized area. So I won't also be like a liberal or a liberal individual or a historian or something, because that system was a system that marginalized my hometown. So the only place that I felt like belonging was the Tunisian left. Even though later on, like after 2011, it got messy, but these are still like the principles that I identify with, even though I don't belong to any political party at the moment. But I hope you get like to see it clearly why I made like this choice. Is just like came spontaneously, to be honest. Like our principles, of course, there's an accumulation of experiences that build the type our thoughts and our principles and our ideology overall, but it definitely comes spontaneously. That you definitely make the choice spontaneously without even like considering it. So an accumulation of experiences, I would say, that led to a specific choice that I made.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And speaking of, radical Islam and Ennahda,
Mhm.
last week on the 31st of December, Nourredine
Yeah.
Bhiri and Fathi Baldi, I think,
Yeah.
they were both arrested on terrorism suspension, something like that. I'm not sure exactly. Yeah.
Suspicions, yeah.
So how do you explain that? Because reading about that, the method in which both were arrested, it sounded quite familiar, and it doesn't sound good at all. Plain clothes,
Yeah.
personnel. So how do you explain that?
I mean, definitely. Just like to be clear, so the arrest, and not arrest,
House arrest,
it's putting like under the house arrest, let's say the house arrest of Nourredine Bhiri and Fathi Baldi, the way that it was like taken, and like this sudden order from the Ministry of Interior definitely rings the bell to lots of people, and it reminds of old practices. That's one thing that's for sure, and it's not reassuring to see such thing happening in these like exceptional measures, status quo, that Kaes Saed, the president of the Republic, Kaes Saed, is calling. But at the same time, we have like both parts. There are like two contrasting opinions that maybe we can find some sort of logic in each opinion. The first opinion, which is to say, oh, okay, that was not an extrajudicial order that took place. It was not extrajudicial arrest. It was perfectly legal, because the Ministry of Interior took into consideration, like applied the Decree 50 of the year 1978, I guess, which allows them to put under house arrest any person that is suspected to be connected to terrorism, and that their liberty practically, or like their presence, represents a threat to national security and order. So there's that opinion, and even I talked to some lawyers, and they said it was perfectly legal. Like some lawyers that are, to be fair, that were very much waiting for the moment that Nourredine Bhiri would get arrested. And there's the other side that says, oh no, we cannot arrest anybody without a fair trial and without an actual like subpoena from the judiciary, and this is like some trespassing of authority. And this really, if this starts with Bhiri and Fathi Baldi, even if the charges were right, this could open the door to some things that are a lot more, and something to be targeting activists and targeting politicians from different ideologies, and like from both left or right. So you could, hearing these explanations, you could find some sort of logic in both of these explanations. But for me, I'm always like hesitant. So I do carry a personal opinion about like Nourredine Bhiri and about Fathi Baldi, even though like I've not heard of him. But for Nourredine Bhiri, for example, and I'm sure like you read our article in Mishkal about the Belaid and Brahmi assassination cases. One of the reasons that make me say, okay, it's about time that Nourredine Bhiri gets arrested is because of the research that I've done, where I figured out that Nourredine Bhiri, as a Minister of Justice, committed some really major violations and major crimes, even though that there has been always some stalling in prosecuting him. And of course, anybody who is in power is going to protect themselves first. So one of the things now that Bhiri, so the accusations of Bhiri mainly, of like why he's now under house arrest is allegedly, according to the statement of the Minister of Interior, he is charged of giving nationalities, Tunisian nationalities, birth certificates, passports to non-Tunisian nationals who are classified as terrorists and who went to Syria. And through this, he also facilitated the travel network of that was responsible for sending thousands of Tunisian youths to Syria and who ultimately either disappeared or were killed in Syria. These are like major accusations of terrorism nature. And throughout the research that I've done also about the Belaid and Brahmi case is that Bhiri was always, he's a very controversial figure. So if people ask you about controversial figures from Ennahda, they would name Ghannouchi, Bhiri, and Ali Al-Arayef. Because Ghannouchi, the leader of Ennahda, Bhiri because of his monopoly at a certain point of the Ministry of Justice. And even after he went out of the Ministry of Justice, he still had his hands all over the judiciary. And Ali Al-Arayef because of his role as a Minister of Interior and the incident of Al-Rash in Siliana, who's like, the victims are still like suffering till today. And I had my colleague Shahad Lina Belhaj cover it recently. They had a recent protest. I don't know if you saw that. Arash is like bird shots victims. So when Ali Al-Arayed was a Minister of Interior, there were a protest in Siliana and they used bird shots against protesters, which left them, lots of them left them like with one eye. So they were blinded in one eye. And there were like also people who got shot in the back. And these are like heinous crimes. So these three figures are very, like I would say, I would classify as the most controversial. And when I did my research about the judiciary and why there was like this much stalling within the judiciary, for example, to pursue the people that were behind the assassination of Belaid and Brahmi, why we had recently the scandal also on the 30th of July, I guess, Judge Bashir Akrami was put under house arrest for charges relating to the fact, well, it was not actually explained, but this is like what was like circulating is that he has been accused of stalling in the investigation of lots of cases, more than 6,000 cases of terrorist nature, and stalling also in the investigation of Belaid and Brahmi, and also tampering with evidence. And this came out in there was a report by the Judicial Inspectorate from the Ministry of Justice that it's not public yet, but the people that got to take a look at, which are basically the lawyers from the Brahmi and Belaid Defense Committee, gave out these details in a press conference, and you could also find it in our article on Mishkal. So for me, I maintain a position from Bhiri, but it's not only based on personal grudge or just like some people called me like on, I don't know, ideological grudge or something, but it is based on experiences that I had since 2013 till now, since like the whole period of Ennahda's rule in Tunisia. Like, I don't know why the moment of July 25th has to make us all of a sudden forget all of what happened prior to that. But there is like clear history, and there is like clear like people like Bhiri's identity or Bhiri's like role as a Minister of Justice have been like the most controversial until today. There has not been any serious charges directed to him, or any serious, at least, investigation, or revision of what he did as a Minister of Justice. So when this moment came of him being put under house arrest, lots of people actually rejoiced, even people who are against what Saed is doing at the moment. And people have been waiting for this to happen since July 25th, and they've seen Saed as reluctant. Well, why isn't he, like, for example, pursuing the people that are like that they think are responsible for committing certain crimes? But I still maintain a certain level of relativity when I give this opinion, because I do understand also the other opinion that says that if we're going to allow such procedure to go in this way without an actual trial taking place, we might fear for what's going to happen next. And also, of course, we cannot give a blank check to Saed. And to be honest, as I said, like, the only reason that I said, okay, it's about time that Bhiri gets prosecuted, or gets like arrested or something, is because he's not better than the hundreds of youth that were arrested last January. So this is like also one of my other problems, is that the fact that they are just labeling him, he was kidnapped from his house, and a leader, an opposition member or something like that. But this has been happening all the time. Why haven't you spoken then, like, about the 1,600 young people that were arrested last January, were kidnapped, they were minors? I interviewed parents of minors in front of the Tunis court who did not know where their children were. 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds. There was even somebody with autism that was taken from in front of their house. So, like, it's unbelievable, this sort of elitism that I'm hearing in this sort of speech is astonishing to me. And I always keep saying this, okay, we're going to talk about what's happening in the country, what Saed is doing, the violation that has taken place. But for me, as a Tunisian journalist from the Northwest, my only responsibility is towards the people that I belong to. So you were part of the authority for 10 years, and now you're just like, to be honest, you're just like reaping, like, how do you say it? You reap what you saw, or something like that. So, like, it's just they had the chance. They had the chance to really do things that would have, like, prevented us being in this, like, political predicament that we are in now. But they never did it. And just the fact that Saed is just getting a little over himself. Not a little over. He's getting over himself. It's definitely, like, what he's doing is not correct. I'm just like, I'm no longer in a mood of wait and see. I'm just like, for me, Saed is the representative of authority right now. So we're just gonna we're being critical of him. So lots of us are being critical of him. We're just not waiting. We're just not keeping him, like, just do whatever he wants. That's a complete lie. Like, lots of us are actually just reporting on the violations that have been taking place since July 25th till now. But all of those violations that Saed is doing does not mean that the violations Ennahda did as part of the authority for over 10 years are going to be suddenly disregarded or just, like, forgotten. You've committed lots of crimes, and unfortunately, if it wasn't for the July 25th moment, none of you would have been, like, tried this way, or none of them. They would have just like, really. They would have forgotten about it, or they would have just, like, they would have never, like, I never imagined a moment where, like, another leader would be accused of terrorism. I never imagined a moment, to be honest. And this is, like, something that Tunisians have been talking about for years now. So it's time for the people that I keep saying this. So it's time for the people that committed crimes against the Tunisian people to be finally put before justice. But what I really want to see right now is definitely not the way Said is doing it, but I really want more concrete results and more uh, like more trials in the procedural sense, I would say. With like the independence of the judiciary now is what's going to be, it's going to be the determining point. And one of the reasons why we are in this predicament is that the judiciary has basically failed us for the past 10 years. Because if we had a true independent judiciary, we would have never like found ourselves in this political predicament, because everybody would assume their mistakes and would be tried for it.
Yeah. And following the July decisions of dismissing the government and freezing parliament,
yeah,
I saw, hundreds of pictures of people rejoicing in the streets, and I'm assuming you were there. So
yeah, I was there,
yeah,
not rejoicing, but just like reporting.
yeah, and likewise, following that, there were other like counter protests denouncing the coup or stuff like that. So I'm assuming you've come in contact with people that are
Yeah,
protesting. So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So how does it look like on the ground? Like, are these people just Ennahda supporters, or are they just activists? And do you think that these decisions were not in the benefit of Tunis?
The anti-coup protest, you mean?
Yeah, both. Yeah. How did it look like on
Both.
the ground?
Okay, for example, on July 25th, the people that I saw rejoicing on the street like at night were just like normal Tunisians. Most of them, I would say, were apolitical. People who are just like fed up of the socioeconomic situation and the political stalemate that they found themselves in, all the fights that we've been seeing as Tunisian people in parliament, the dysfunctionality of parliament, the fact that our economy is going like in a down spiral, the fact that the corona crisis has killed more than 20,000 people, and Hisham Shishi, the prime minister, was playing tennis with our like tennis champion on Jebel, or like having a vacation in Hammamet with his cabinet. They were just like ready to just like, okay, we're done. We don't want these people anymore, and we're celebrating because Kaes Saed had finally done something. And people actually were blaming him before that because he disappointed lots of people when we were like dying. He disappointed lots of people, and this is something that people are forgetting after July 25th. People are forgetting that Kaes Saed is also somebody to blame as much as Hisham Shishi, because they were just like so busy in their internal political crisis that they let more than 20,000 people die at a point when we could have acquired the vaccine and helped like really decrease that number, like help avoid that number. But on July 25th, people were celebrating that finally he has done something. Most of the people that I saw on the street, there were some people who are like of political affiliations. I would say maybe people of political affiliations, like people who are, of course, anti the system. They had to take like a step back and think about what's happening. Because of course, when you're like politicized, you need some time. I really do not know what to say or how to describe it or give a position, because that's me. Like I cannot really give a full position about what's happening without like assessing the whole situation and seeing where we're going. So I really, at the beginning, I could not call it a coup. I would always say a so-called coup or like the exceptional measures. Until today, I'm always like I'm really cautious about using each term. So I really need to hear and take in as much information as possible in order for me to make take a specific position, and that's the case for lots of politicized people. But the other people that were on the seat were people who supported Kaes Saed as president, people who voted for him, and people who were fed up with the political class and who were ready to kick them out at any cost possible. Because for them, and this is what I was hearing, they did not care about democracy, they did not care about freedom. well, some of them did not care about freedom. At the same time, we're sure that, oh, we will never go back to Ben Ali's era. That's for sure. Like we've had a major step. We're a major step ahead. There's no way we'll get back like to Ben Ali's era. But what matters for us now is that we are dying in front of hospitals. Our hospitals do not have oxygen. People cannot go out of their homes. People are losing their jobs. The food expensive are like skyrocketing. People cannot bring food to the table at the end of the day for their families. This is what mattered the most. So freedom became a luxury for lots of them. Democracy became a luxury for lots of them, and they did not care the least bit about the right process, that they were going to get rid of the like reigning political class as long as they just got rid of it. So when Saed decided through his interpretation of Article 80 of the Constitution to like sack the whole government, freeze the parliament, and lift parliamentary immunity of MPs, they were just like happy. And for them, Said is like one of them because he does not belong to any political party. He's a complete outsider. So he just like joined from the outside. So they were ecstatic about it. And then after July 25th, on July 26th, to be honest, I was not like in front of Parliament because of course I had I had to rest. But I was like up at night, till 1 a.m. like between the night between 25th and 26th near Ennahda headquarters, and I did see some people like trying to like get into the building of Ennahda headquarters, but there was police protection that night, and there were definitely some like tear gas use. So the police was there on the night of the 25th protecting the party's building. So that's when like I started saying, okay, we cannot say it's a coup when the police is like protecting the party's building. So there is still some order, and there was like the military. So I was hesitant at the beginning. That's why like I did not give a stance of me calling it a coup. It's not that easy. But on the days that followed, we started seeing protests on the street and then which like prevailed later on to be the anti-coup movement and the Citizens Against the Coup group. The people that I saw at the first protests were mainly Ennahda and the Dignity Coalition Party, and some specific individuals like Ghaya Ben Mbarek and what's his name, Bouzizi, or some people, some specific individual, but it definitely was people from the ruling coalition, Qalb Tunis, all these like from the ruling coalition. But then after the elapse of the first 30 days, we started seeing more young people and more people who are from outside of this coalition, from the supporters of this coalition, join these protests and just like state, hey, listen, we cannot, this happened especially after Kaes Saed suspended the constitution and just maintained the first two articles, like the liberty first two articles. He started losing some sort of approval rate from citizens. So in the protests, we started seeing more opposition from some of his prior supporters, like from the people who initially supported him on July 25th, because of his decision to suspend the constitution and to keep his like oversight of the three authorities further. So I would say now there are more people that are getting on the opposition side of Kaes Saed. More people are against what he's doing, and more people are getting suspicious of what he's doing. They're not trusting him anymore, even some of his supporters and even some of the people who worked for him at his political campaign, at his like presidential campaign. But the overwhelming opinion, like among like regular Tunisians or normal Tunisians, and my definition of regular and normal Tunisians is that when I go out on the street and just like randomly start talking to people downtown Tunis, is just like the prevailing opinion. So the prevailing opinion is always still, we have trust in Kaes Saed, we'll wait to see what he's gonna do. Oh, now we have the referendum. People are suspicious too of the this digital referendum thing, but they're just they definitely don't want the parliament to get back, and they definitely don't want to see Ennahda rule again. These two things are definitely something that we cannot it's conclusive for me from the people that I meet in the street, just a small portion. Some people might say that my opinion or my estimation is relative, but this is the thing that I'm seeing. When I talk to people randomly in the street, or even when I talk to family and friends, people are just fed up with 10 years of Ennahda ruling and of the ruling coalition. But we would say Ennahda ruling because Ennahda always prevailed as the majority party of any coalition, even though sometimes they deny that they were part of power, but indirectly they were everywhere. You cannot deny that. You can say that to people outside of Tunisia, and maybe they would believe that, but us in Tunisia, we do know for sure that for 10 years, they've been the sole and major political pole in Tunisia.
Yeah. And what's your take on Monsef Marzouki being sentenced to 4 years in absentia for conspiring against state security?
For conspiring, Monsef Marzouki, for me, legally what he did is wrong,
I think he called for France to cut off ties with Tunisia, right?
Yeah, he also where I do not follow the affair that much, but this is not my opinion, but this is when I talk to people who understand law and who study law and who are practicing law, they said what he did is basically the conspiracy charges, or rather the how you call it, tahrir, how do you say
tahrir?
Incitement. The incitement against national interest that he did, which is, so I don't know if you know the whole story, but he basically stated publicly that he had a major role in the decision of the International Organization of Francophonie, or something, of French, to postpone their summit in Jerba, which should have taken place this summer, or this summer, sometime a few months ago. So the fact that he admitted that, then by Tunisian law or by diplomatic law or something, he incited against Tunisia's national interests, and so for that reason he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. However, there was very misinformation taking place that he was there was an Interpol subpoena against him. That's not true, because if you go to Interpol's website, you can never find a subpoena in Monsef Marzouki's. There are lots of fake news, to be honest. But that was definitely a ruling for him. But I don't say Monsef Marzouki is definitely the only part that I can support him is the fact that he used to be a human rights activist. He was a human rights activist at some point. But he was the president as part of Troika, and he is to blame as much as Ennahda. And on multiple occasions, he did meet in the presidential palace with multiple terrorists, and the pictures.
He's Islamist as well, right? He's Islamist as well, right?
Well, I don't know, but during Troika's rule, he was meeting with a lot of terrorists. So the pictures are still on the presidency's page. So you can take a guess what's his affiliation. But I don't know. Now people are just I would say jumping on the bandwagon, just to trying to revive their legacy as a human rights activist, and they're fearful for Tunisia's democracy and all. But at the same time, to be honest, I really hate this rhetoric. We, of course, in every single situation, we should not be in total peace, or we should not feeling very comfortable. But there's one thing that people keep confusing, is that representative democracy is not the full definition of democracy. Each country needs to have its own version of democracy, and for the past few years, representative democracy has failed Tunisians, and hence Tunisians start losing faith in representative democracy. So just because in Tunisia some people are saying, oh, we don't want to follow the same criteria as that exist in the West, it doesn't mean they want to go back to dictatorship. Like like we lived here, we've seen dictatorship, we lived through dictatorship, and we really had to bear the cost of dictatorship, and it affects us still today. People were tortured during dictatorship, and they still suffer from the impacts of that. And it's not only the Islams, that were tortured. Lots of people were tortured, like either like torture in prison, or either like the marginalization that the regions, like different regions in Tunisia are suffering from, the lack of development that different regions are suffering from. Now I'm talking to you from Tatooine, and in Tatooine I was talking with someone who said, like, during summer they would spend summer like for 2 months without water, even though you're downtown, you're like in the city downtown. In Ramadan they would have some water just during like the breaking the fast time. So imagine that happening in Tunisia in 2021, 2022, and now you're just like talking to me as if your problem is just the best. This is the thing, this is like, sorry, your problem is just like the most important. This is the thing that I hate the most. I hate when people with privileges talk about their fears as the most important, while belittling the fears of other people who do not know those privileges and who do not care those privileges. Now, for me, I might care about freedom. I might care about democracy. I might care about I don't know, me not being able, like, to, for example, to practice some of my freedoms. But for other people, their worries is water in Ramadan to break the fast. So you see the difference? I mean, it's not, both are important, but when do I start having a problem is that when the people with privileges start thinking, oh, this is more important. You had 10 years to fix the problems of other, like you had 10 years ruling, and you had 10 years to try like to have developmental projects everywhere in the country and make people's lives better, but instead you made it worse. And now you come and try to defend your privileges. Yeah, I'm worried about those privileges as well. I'm worried about freedom, democracy, but that's something I'm sure that the people that are always fighting in the streets are never going to let go. But that does not that never gives you the right to belittle the opinion of the people that supported Kaes Saed, because all they cared about is just like staying alive because they were dying because of Corona, and getting rid of the people that they consider are the ones that turn them into, cause them despair and hunger, and they cause them lots of pain. So here, that's like exactly my opinion. I hope that I like articulated it in a way, because sometimes like I found difficulties just like explaining to people why, or like I don't hold a specific position, but at the same time, even if I have a position, I don't think that it's better than other people's demands. You see, it's other people's demands which are like basic demands, basic human beings demands, like food and water and health.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So I think now we've arrived to the $1 million question.
Yeah, $1 million. What is it?
Yeah.
You're gonna give me the $1 million if I answer correctly?
I mean, the podcast makes so much money. Like I think $3 a month.
Oh, that's great. That's a lot of money. You're rich.
Yeah. So Kaes Saed's decision, freezing parliament and dismissing the government, do you think that will ultimately lead to a relapse, like Tunisia backsliding back into authoritarian rule? I mean, I think at this point, answers are going to be quite speculative, and of course, there's no definitive answer. But I want to hear, like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
How do you think this is going to end up ultimately?
As you said, like, it's very speculative, but for me, it's not exactly his decision to like sack the government of Mishishi and like freeze the parliament and take control of the judiciary, but it's rather his actions afterwards. So now it's been like, let's say 5 months since July. I'm afraid his actions are getting more and more concerning. They make me concerned. Like, for example, the increase in violations against journalists. So the fact that as journalists, we no longer have, it's not we no longer, like this had been like the policy of the presidency since like we had a government, but the lack of information and access to information and the violations, the fact that Al Jazeera crew still have their office confiscated, and it does not really matter for me whether I agree with Al Jazeera's editorial line or not, but they are journalists who were kicked out without any order from their offices, and they're still now in like the Tunisian Journalists Union. The increase also, like for example, the assault of journalists on September 1st, and I was assaulted as well as other journalists. There are certain patterns that definitely worry me. Also, the choice of Kaes Saed to select governors from people he knows from his circle, that's not different very much from like what Ennahda used to do, or Mishishi and his like allies used to do. So there are like similar patterns of the way he's tackling authority at this point. But I would say I would probably give a more assertive opinion, and not more assertive opinion, but more assertive position after the elections that he set a date for, or maybe after the initial referendum and the new constitution or the new like electoral law that we'll have. But one thing for sure is that people's worries are right, and people worry that Kaes Saed might not be up to what he chose to do, like he might not be up to the challenge that he chose to take. Because you cannot just like shut down discussion and conversation with all political parties in the country and expect just like to keep heading forwards without assuming any responsibility, or without like even like being questioned. Of course, people are going to start questioning you when you are seizing all three authorities and you're not allowing discussion with other parties. So even like today, the discussion with national organizations such as Al-Jadihash and UGTT and I mean the Journalists Union is still very lacking, and adding to that, there are like really some internal issues going on in these national organizations. So really, this situation is very, it's worrying. But one thing that I would say for sure is that Tunisians will never. It's like for now I can say that it's really difficult for us like to head back like towards Ben Ali's era, towards like dictatorship, because Tunisia's mindset have definitely changed. We've become more politicized. We talk politics outside. We express our opinions. And the thing that we said from the beginning, that even if we agree what Said did on July 25th, we're not going to give him a blank check. So whenever he's going to be doing something wrong, like for example, his idea of a digital referendum, which is like very, really how can I describe it? Like, it's something that is really Tunisia is not ready for. Like, we had them affecting the vaccine pass law, and the whole network collapsed in one day because everybody was trying like to get their vaccine pass. So imagine holding a referendum online. Like, it's just like, it does not make sense. Like sometimes I feel like some of his ideas are very utopic and stem like from political inexperience from him. And another aspect is that a lot of Tunisians are also suspicious. He's tackling the issue politically, like changing the constitution, new elections, whereas people are worried about the economy and the inflation rate and unemployment and really it's catastrophic. Like the fact, oh, are we going to get paid next month? For example, we had a delay last month in public function salaries. So some people see that, okay, what is he going to do a year ahead? It's going to be like very late, but maybe the political solution and his intention also to change the political system could help the economy. But some people were, no, the economy needs to be tackled now. It's like the base of everything. So his inexperience is going to cause us all like to keep going in this down spiral and just like losing a lot. My position in one word is that I'm reluctant and hesitant. Not one word. Well, I'm gonna elaborate. Obviously, I'm very at this point. I'm very suspicious of Saed's vision because of the lack of clarity. There's a lack of clarity, even though he gave these dates for like specific like a referendum and a parliamentary elections. But what he's doing at the moment really makes me very suspicious of his ability to lead the country to a better place, and also his intentions. Is he seeking just like to consolidate more power, or is he really genuinely really want to make Tunisians' lives better, even though people still trust him and think he's an honest man? People who have dealt with him personally, his students still talk about how honest he is and how he loves his country and he loves the people, and there's in no way he would think about like personal gain. But now Saed is no longer that university professor that we used to see talking in the news about the constitution. Now he's the president, and whether like it or not, power changes people. So we have to keep our doubts and we have to keep our eyes open going ahead from now.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, I really do envy you.
You envy me. Come. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Ghaya Ben Mbarek, for coming on the podcast.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Abdallah. Can't wait to hear more from your podcast. Keep going.
Anytime. I think it's been a very fruitful conversation.
Definitely. I have not talked like for this long in a really long time. In English, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I hope we get to record more episodes in the future.
Hopefully. Please tell me.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank a couple of Tunisian listeners, which actually at some point the podcast was ranked as the second, like in the top 2 in the documentary category in Tunis in the on Apple Podcasts. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank Kalina Azzaiz, whom you know, and Amal Gattari and Adam Dos, a couple of Tunisian friends. And that's it. Thank you for listening, and thank you so much once again, Ghaya. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdallah.
الشعب التونسي ما يموتش. الشعب التونسي العظيم. تحيا تونس الحر. المجد الشهداء. الحرية للتواسة. يا تواسة يا مهجرين. يا تواسة يا اللي شدتوا الحبوسات. يا تواسة يا اللي عذبوكم. يا تواسة يا اللي قهروكم. يا تواسة يا اللي غبنوكم. يا تواسة يا اللي سرقوكم. اتنفسوا الحرية. شعب تونس اهدالنا الحرية. يحيى شعب تونس. تحيا تونس العظيمة. تحيا الحرية. المجد للشهداء. يا تواسة ما عادش خوف. المجرم هرب. المجرم هرب. بن عليه هرب. بن عليه هرب من الشعب التونسي. بن عليه هرب. بن عليه هرب. بن عليه هرب. بن عليه هرب. المجرم هرب. السارق هرب. السفاح القاتل هرب. هرب من ليبيا. والشعب هو اللي يحكم. المجد للشعب. المجد للشهداء. العظمة لتونس. والبقال الشعب التونسي. يا شعبنا يا عظيم، يا شعبنا يا كبير، يا شعبنا يا اللي عطيت الغالي، يا شعبنا يا اللي عطيت ولادك، يا شعبنا يا اللي عطيت فرزتك بادك، يا شعبنا يا باهي، يا شعبنا يا سمح، يا شعبنا يا عظيم. رانا تحررنا وبن عليه هرب، راهو بن عليه هرب، هرب بن عليه هرب، بن عليه هرب، بن عليه هرب. تونس من غير بن عليه، بن عليه المجرم هرب، بن عليه المجرم اتنحى. الشعب التونسي نحى بن عليه، الشعب التونسي نحى بن عليه. وانا تو في الابناء. يحيى الشعب، تحيا الحريه، تحيا تونس الحره، يحيى شعبنا العظيم والمجد الشهداء. راهو دمكم ما مشاش خساره.